A few weeks ago, Trump declared himself a nationalist at a rally in Houston in support of Ted Cruz's running for government. And as we added that to the list of dumb shit that Trump says, our list became longer than a CVS receipt. But unlike the coupons for discounted deodorant, we can't ignore this.
The rule of corrupt, power-hungry globalists. You know what a globalist is, right? You know what a globalist is. A globalist is a person that wants the globe to do well, frankly, not caring about our country so much. And you know what? We can't have that. You know, they have a word. It sort of became old-fashioned. It's called a nationalist. And I say, really, we're not supposed to use that word. You know what I am? I'm a nationalist, okay? I'm a nationalist.
Okay, this is crazy. Most of what he says is crazy, but this is just nutter butter. Now, the alt-right have been encoding anti-globalism in their shit for decades, and many far-right activists heavily link expressions of modern-day anti-globalism to anti-Semitism. In 1999, many youth were inspired by the anti-World Trade Organization protests that mostly took place in Seattle, and for really good reason. The World Trade Organization pissed a lot of people off. Through regulations pushed by them, the public began to see that this institution based in globalization ideologies were actually heavily serving the rich. They cut down tariffs for developed countries, but increased it for developing countries. They removed environmental regulations on multinational corporations and took jobs previously owned by American citizens overseas to exploit cheap labor. But protests like these were like beauty pageants for pedophiles. Oh, you hate multinational corporation? You want to save the planet too? You're against the New World Order? Us too! And we're Nazis! Woohoo! Many white youth activists who were passionate about keeping jobs in America and looking out for the people's interests were being swayed into believing that these white nationalist groups had the same values as them. White nationalist leaders recruited member after member at these protests and across internet activist networks. And Matt Hale was an anti-globalist, but he had some pretty fucking insane views. Matt Hale was a co-founder and the Pontifex Maximus, or the highest priest of a white separatist group known as the World Church of the Creator. He recruited many of his members in person at anti-globalization protests and on online networks. Look at this interview he did in reference to members of his church killing 2 and wounding 9 people of color back in 1997.
I take it you do condemn Hitler, don't you? You do think what he did was wrong, the Holocaust and everything about him, don't you? You'll condemn him tonight.
The fact of the matter is that the Jews are parasites, and I don't lose 1 minute of sleep over whatever happened to them in the Second World War that was instigated by the Jews. I don't care about the Jews, I care about white people.
It's not every day you see Fox News calling out racism. But this is in-your-face racist. In 2001, a new website emerged, purposed to be a collective space for anti-globalist activists emerged, calling itself the Anti-Globalization Action Network. But the Anti-Defamation League, the world's leading organization in fighting against anti-Semitism, discovered and reported that it was actually a front for the National Alliance to recruit members into their groups. And the National Alliance is literally the KKK. On the National Alliance website, their eligibility requirements are simple. Any white person of good character can join the group, meaning that nobody should be in the group. Billy Roper, the deputy membership coordinator of the National Alliance, said, "We find that a lot of well-intentioned white youth have been brainwashed by the controlled media and the establishment, and naturally want to rebel, but they understand that the only acceptable form of rebellion is that which maintains the myth of universal equality. Once they discover that white nationalists are also anti-capitalist and anti-establishment and pro-environment, and furthermore, that the establishment considers biological racism to be antithetical to their hegemony, they begin to understand that we are the true revolutionaries, not me. Most people, by definition, are politically apathetic and inactive. Those who are more idealistic or ideologically inclined make much better prospective recruits than do lemmings." Billy Roper. The National Alliance took a bunch of people looking to do good and basically did what the Emperor did with Anakin Skywalker, except in this instance, the dark side was actually nationalism. and they are doing their work extremely well. The National Alliance propaganda has instigated acts of extreme violence towards minority groups all over the world. Take one of their huge projects, like their music company, Resistance Records, for example. They are a recording company that, I shit you not, makes hatecore music for racial nationals. And I know I'm really scraping the bottom of the barrel here, but listen to this song, just 10 seconds of the song, made by this jackass named Johnny Rebel.
You know, there ain't much difference between a nigger and a donkey.
And the Anti-Defamation League said that Resistance Records is the largest and most prominent label for white power hate music. And they have instigated many acts of extreme terrorism. Now, to be anti-globalist is basically like saying you're a nationalist. But I didn't want to assume, so Trump actually just came out and said it about a month ago. And who better to say it to than the United Nations? And of course, Trump has been doing this since before he became president. America First always been his go-to campaign slogan. And of course, Trump has been doing this since before he even became president. America First has always been his go-to campaign slogan.
The Netherlands, second.
Germany second, Venice second, Denmark second,
Brazil second,
Portugal second,
Austria second,
Poland second,
Mexico be second,
India second.
Now, the public and the press have been very adamant about questioning Trump for his comments on nationalism, and Trump has been killing it with those answers. Not really.
On the campaign trail, you called yourself a nationalist. Some people saw that as emboldening white nationalists. Now people are also saying
I don't know why you'd
that
say
the
that.
president.
That's such a racist
There are
question.
some people that say that now the Republican Party is seen as supporting white nationalists because of your rhetoric. What do you make of that?
I don't believe.
You know, reporter Yamiche didn't even say it. She just said that some people are suggesting that it might be empowering white supremacist hate groups. And what Trump and other alt-right activists do is use this tactic to further an anti-Semitic agenda, but without the Jews. Trump and his supporters in the media constantly encode anti-Semitic messages into his dialogues without directly mentioning the Jews.
Dog whistle politics? What's that? Let me give you some examples. Perhaps the most infamous example is Ronald Reagan campaigning in 1980 and complaining about welfare queens. Now, welfare queen, the term doesn't mention race on its surface. It's code. Nevertheless, the term conjures race. It conjures race in terms of the image of a poor African-American woman abusing the welfare system. And it conjures race in terms of who's being abused, the taxpayers, who implicitly are white.
A more modern-day example of dog whistling would be the head of Judicial Watch, Chris Farrell's comments on the caravan.
Look, this is a criminal involvement on the part of these leftist groups. It's highly organized, very elaborate, sophisticated operation. I have that from the highest levels of the Guatemalan government. They're investigating those groups criminally, and I strongly urge President Trump and Attorney General Sessions to do the same here. A lot of these folks also have affiliates who are getting money from the Soros-occupied State Department, and that is a very great concern. You want to start cutting money there.
In recent weeks, Trump and other members of his cabinet suggestively implicate that George Soros, an extremely successful Hungarian-American philanthropist who survived occupied Nazi Germany and a favored bogeyman among white nationalists and neo-Nazis, is funding the caravan.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. No, I wouldn't. I don't know who, but I wouldn't be surprised. A lot of people say yes.
They are pushing the narrative that Jewish man George Soros is funding the Guatemalan government, who are using the caravan to launch an attack on the white people of America. You can't make this shit up. And now we are seeing the largest acts of anti-Semitic violence in the United States since forever. In response to the synagogue shooting in Pennsylvania, the Anti-Defamation League released this message.
Saturday's attack took the lives of 11 congregants, making it the deadliest attack on Jewish people in U.S. history. in U.S. history. According to the Anti-Defamation League, it's part of a pattern, however, of growing anti-Semitism in the country. In 2017, the number of anti-Semitic incidents rose by nearly 60%, the largest single increase on record by the organization.
In 2002, the Anti-Defamation League put out an article about deceptive website attempts to lure anti-globalization activists to neo-Nazi movements. So white nationalist leaders like the previously mentioned robotic recreation of what I would call the Antichrist, Matt Hale, saw an opportunity. Matt Hale said that the protests in Seattle were incredibly successful from the point of view of the rioters as well as our church. They helped shut down talks of the Jew World Order and helped make a mockery of the Jewish occupational government around the world. Bravo. They were white, they were anti-globalization, and they loved the internet. And Trump is instigating this over and over again, putting America first, literally denouncing globalism in favor of nationalism in front of the world leaders, and straight up calling himself a nationalist after talking about corrupt globalists. And this is not even a little bit okay. People argue, oh, nationalism can be used as a driver for independence from oppressing nations like in the Indian independence movement, or the movement for sovereignty in the Hawaiian Islands. Comparing nationalism's place in Hawaiian sovereignty and nationalism in white America would be like comparing a paintball gun to an AR-15. One has the power to shoot your friend and they act like they didn't just get tagged, and the AR-15 has the power to kill a bunch of black people in a church in Charleston, and then we all just act like it didn't happen. Macron put Trump under fire when he had a few things to say about nationalism.
Car le patriotisme est l'exact contraire du nationalisme. Le nationalisme en est la trahison. En disant nos intérêts d'abord et qu'importe les autres, on gomme ce qu'une nation a de plus précieux, ce qui la fait vivre, ce qui la porte à être grande, ce qui est le plus important, ses valeurs morales.
Nationalism is a disease, and it is often confused with patriotism. The difference between patriotism and nationalism is that the patriot is proud of his country for what it does, and the nationalist is proud of his country no matter what it does. The first attitude creates a feeling of responsibility, but the second, a feeling of blind arrogance that leads to racism, hate, and war. Anti-globalization efforts can be for a good cause, and the policies and methods implemented by institutions like the World Trade Organization and the United Nations can be improved vastly. But we need to look for the difference between anti-globalization information and nationalist propaganda.